Hello and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Jacob Finley, CEO of Full Day. I'm here with Chris O'Brien. Hey, Chris.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody.
All right, we are excited to get going here. We got a lot of stuff to cover. And our topic today is a day in the life of a service manager, or in other words, how to quarterback a shop. And we first off have a little bit of business. First introductions, Jacob Finley, co-founder of Full Day. I'm a CPA by trade. Chris here is more of an operations guy. Lots of expertise in running fleets and also a Lean Six Sigma black belt.
Yeah, old dog. Good looking guy on the right, wearing the hat.
Yeah, exactly.
Or on the left, right?
We're lucky to have Chris for the looks. Real quick for the housekeeping. In this go-to webinar, of course, there's a control panel off to the right. Just click the little red arrow to expand or shrink that control panel. And if you have any questions for us, there's a section on that control panel where you can enter questions. And just go down to that section. And if you could, in the questions, why don't you tell us where you're calling in from so we can see that that's working, and just type that in there and we'll see there. Yep, we start seeing those flowing in now. Hey, Shelly, we see you there. So down in the questions section, put that in. And if you have any questions during the course of the webinar, feel free to put those in there. We'll have time for questions at the end usually.
Yeah.
Regardless of that, though, we'll get back to you after the webinar if we don't get to your question during the webinar itself. So that's how you do the questions. Yeah, go to the question section, enter that in. Yep, we see people from all over the country, all over North America actually joining. Great to have you guys. So let's get going. The topic, a day in the life of the service manager. This has been near and dear to our hearts recently. We've been doing a lot of work around this, and we wanted to share some of our findings and some of what's coming and what's gone live even recently in the app with our regular releases. This is how it's going to go. So 10 points, way more points than we typically do, so we have to move fast to get everything, but you see them there, and we're just going to dive in here.
Yep.
Chris, unless you have something you want to.
No, this is great. Well, we could tell the story of the airplane flight. No, not that one?
No.
Yeah. If you have a secret, don't tell Jacob. He will make sure all passengers around in like a kind of 10-foot forward and back area. We might as well have the lady just megaphone.
Yeah, once again, I'm sorry, Chris.
No, you don't have to apologize.
Occasionally, that's true. When something is so shocking, I do repeat it loud enough for people on an airplane to hear. I apologize.
Just so you know, it's a weight loss competition, and he found out how round I was and was announcing it almost like he was going to stand on his seat and pull a Tom Cruise.
Wasn't that bad, but we are in a weight loss competition. We're trying to get healthier. All right, here we go. To kick things off, we're going to pose a polling question, and this kind of sets the tone. But the question is, do you, in your shop, do you have a dedicated service manager? And we're going to launch this thing, and it'll show up here on your screen. In your shop, do you have a dedicated service manager? Actually, you know what? I launched the wrong poll. This poll is asking, does your service manager also handle parts? So we'll do that one. We were going to ask that later. Let's see how this, so
That's
responses are coming in. Wow, they're swinging all over the place as the responses come in. It looks like roughly, we'll let a few more come in here, roughly 60-40, 57-41. All right, I'm going to close this poll and display the results. So 57-41, 57% of you do have your service managers ordering parts. So once again, it's not the question that's on the screen, but you're doing that. And then now I'm going to launch another poll, and it is, do you have a dedicated service manager? Yes or no? We'll see those results come in.
And dedicated, we're looking for, you could be the shop owner who's also dubbing as a service manager, but do you have like a dedicated FTE on staff that's just for being the service manager?
Basically,
of the shop?
the quarterback, right?
Yep, separate from ownership, exactly.
Yep, exactly. All right, so those results coming in. All right, now here's the results there. 79% of you said yes, 21% said no. So 79% have a dedicated service manager. Okay.
Yep.
All right, good to know. Now let's dive into this. Number one thing, day in the life of a service manager. you're a service manager, you're rolling into work, you park your probably truck, right? You're probably not driving a car and or your motorcycle, whatever. And you're going to walk right into the office, right? And do nothing, just ignore all the trucks that are in the yard.
Personally, I do what's called a yard check.
Right.
And we used to do this at the private fleet, but even if if you're at the shop, there's equipment that just kind of shows up overnight, right?
Yeah. Yep.
You have no idea, just off in the corner, there's a trailer that got dropped off by somebody in the middle of the night, especially if you are doing business or your yard's open for dropping hooks, and or if you're leasing, right? So you could have equipment coming and going, but what is actually on my property and how much of it do I have repair orders for?
Yeah, exactly. So what you want to do as a service manager, if you're not already doing this, or if your service manager isn't doing it, in the morning, you want to check around the lot for the units that are there. And you're going to note a couple things. Number one, what's there that wasn't there last night or when you left the night before? And is there anything that was there last night that's now gone? Seems like a very simple task to do, but has major benefits later on in the day. You can imagine when customers call up saying, hey, did you notice my truck is there? You can now intelligently say, yeah, of course I noticed. And in fact, we already opened the ticket. We see what's wrong. Things are moving forward. Really great way to satisfy the customer versus saying, oh, we didn't notice. Let me go out right now and check.
Yes. Now, ideally, if you're using the customer portal, the customer is able to drop in Full Bay, we have a customer portal for the Full Bay customers that are online. And ideally that I'm going to go use the customer portal, or my dispatcher is, and we're going to have somebody drop the truck off, or a yard hostler or somebody drop the truck off, and the service request will already be in the system. So it should be fairly straightforward. We definitely recommend leveraging that portal.
Train your customers to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. Super powerful. But even if the portal wasn't used, whether you're using a clipboard similar to what the picture depicts, or you have a tablet and you're out in the yard doing your yard check, you can just create that service order or that service request to investigate more. We don't really, we don't know that it's a full service order at this point, so maybe you just spin up a service request, or you spin up a quick estimate to just find out what's going on and at least log the event that the piece of equipment is in the yard.
Yep, exactly. So perform the yard check. And right now you could go out, we've got a picture of a clipboard here. You could go out with the clipboard and do it. You could do it on a tablet, a phone or tablet. Right now, in terms of Full Bay, you just use the notation on the tablet, or you use it to open a service request. In a couple of weeks, what's happening, Chris?
I think that people are going to be surprised. We're going to launch the ability to do a yard check right inside of Full Bay. So the ability to go out, do a checklist. And also, for those of you, even before this feature, if you know the unit number that is in the yard, you can actually key that into the search tool. There's a global search tool inside of Full Bay, and it'll start to identify all the customers with that exact unit number to kind of help narrow it down. Maybe you don't know where the trailer came from. Maybe it's not logoed. Maybe you don't know where the truck is. You can key in the unit number and identify who actually owns it.
Yep, exactly. All right, moving on. So we were going to do a polling question number 2 here, but we already know the answer to, oh, no, this is a new one.
Yeah.
I really jumped the gun on the last one. All right, our third and final polling question we'll get into here is, do you actually pick up and deliver customer trucks? Are you involved in doing that? And we'll just let the results pull in here. So some shops will send one technician or runner even out to a customer yard. Obviously, they'll need the CDL, pick up the customer's truck, drive it into the shop, maybe leave their truck at the customer's yard until the repair is done, or maybe send 2 guys out, or women, theoretically. And there's a lot of coordinating and logistics involved in that. So, all right, we got pretty good responses here. So this is what the results look like. 66% of you do pick up and deliver customer trucks. 34% are a no. So a lot of this going on. So what this is leading into is, and here are the results. Here we go. What this is leading into is number 2 for day in the life of a service manager is dispatching these deliveries and pickups. So if you're doing pickups and deliveries, you need to keep a list of what units are in the shop that need to be delivered. So of the units you identified in the yard check, which one of those are sitting there still because we haven't delivered it? So which units need to be delivered and what units need to be picked up? And that would include tows. If you're going to send a wrecker or a tow truck out there to pick up the truck and bring it in. And it can be a logistical nightmare depending, and you want to keep these techs turning wrenches. If they're the ones picking it up, you want to make sure you're being smart about this.
Yeah, sometimes what we'll see is, so to help, how do people do it today? There's so many different ways that it's being done today. We can just covering a few of them. I've seen where if you have enough equipment that's being shuttled back and forth, you're just going to hire a dedicated person to just shuttle equipment. It's going to be a CDL driver that, very entry-level wage. There's no fingerprinting product or anything like that. You could typically get somebody for fairly reasonably priced in your market to just hustle equipment. That's it. They're just running back and forth. You probably have a service truck or something. The last thing you want to do, though, is have two people in a vehicle hustling trailers back and forth. Just the expense of paying two people to go run back and forth, it might behoove you to have just a cheap little service truck that's not for doing repairs.
Yeah.
So if you end up with two, I'd figure out any way possible to get out of that if it's reasonable, even up to and including just hiring a hustler if there's enough equipment.
Yeah.
The other thing too that we see a lot of is where it's reasonable and where it's possible is not everybody does mobile repairs, and we always like to promote mobile repairs because now that you have, if you have full bay, you can do the repair on the tablet, you can keep track of the repair order, you can request parts, etc. But the service truck can actually go on site and perform the service at the customer's yard. Ideally, that's what you would want to do to just lean out the process and not have additional steps hustling equipment. It's not always the case or ideal, or you're not set up to do mobile repair. It might be something to consider to reduce the expense in that process. But by far, to your point, Jay, the last thing you want to do is put two technicians in a truck to go drive over so one tech can drive back.
Right.
That costs you money, and it costs a lot of money.
A couple other considerations here. Most shops that do pickups and deliveries charge for the drive time, especially if it's a technician sitting in the seat. The opportunity cost there for the technician making the drive is they could have been turning wrenches on a repair and making revenue for the shop. So the way you justify billing this to your customers is, this service is saving you a lot of time by me delivering it. But I need to bill this technician at the full rate. If you're able to do that, you want to do that. And that's obviously a consideration in hiring a separate CDL driver.
Yeah, that's what we have a group in the Midwest as part of their contract. One of the ways that they won their deal was, so if you're in a scenario where you can bill door to door, exactly what Jacob said, that makes you whole. At least it's making you whole. But in order to win the business, you might have to give up that money, right? That's where you really have to go in and just get somebody qualified to do it. You usually can find somebody, even if somebody's retired wanting part-time work, it doesn't, or an entry-level CDL person who doesn't want to fingerprint, et cetera, or who can't, maybe they physically can't fingerprint loads anymore. They're definitely out there, and it's cheaper than having a tech not being productive.
So you want to be able to coordinate all that, and obviously, to your point, Chris, coordinate rides back and forth for the drivers. And here's a crazy idea: look into, if you're sending a driver out to drop off a truck, does it make sense to bring him back with an Uber or a Lyft?
That's true. With technology the way it is, it's great that you brought that up, because that is a viable option, right?
All right, next one, number 3, assign work to technicians. If I'm a service manager, I need to get the technicians assigned their work. Everybody sees it. The technicians lined up in front of the service manager's desk, waiting for assignments, so on and so forth. Obviously, in full bay, you're doing this electronically, so there's not so much of that waiting at the service manager's desk going on. But your responsibility as a service manager is to get these technicians loaded up with work and get them turning wrenches. And what you want is a list that you're keeping track of and keeping up to date that shows all the technicians in the shop, who's scheduled to work today, who's clocked into work, and who's not only clocked into work, but clocked into a job. And this is an important distinction because obviously a technician may be clocked into work, so they're making money, but the shop isn't making money until the technician is actually working on a job, turning wrenches. And ideally you have them clocked onto the job so you can see that they're working on the job.
A lot of times in onboarding or in training, this is a pet peeve of mine where, let's say that the shop starts at 8 o'clock. So if you're a full bay customer, there's a buy tech view on the service page. I like to switch to the buy tech view. It's color coded, and you can put the schedule in for the technicians that they start at 8 and end at 5, what work is authorized for them. But what's really great is it's color coded. And if the shop opens at 8 o'clock and all the techs start at 8, then I'm going to go to that page, and by 8:15, everybody on that page should either be grayed out, like they're not here at all today, or they should all be green. And so that's a quick way to find out, am I making money? Are my techs making me money? So at 8 o'clock in the morning, I switch to the by tech view. By 8:15, I should see everybody lit up at green. If I have a bunch of red on that page where people are clocked in and they're not clocked into service orders, they're going to the tech is going to be highlighted in red. I'm probably going to walk out to the shop and figure out why are they not on the job that's assigned to them, because I need every technician green by 8:15, or I'm just eroding profits. Every minute I let that continue going. So if you don't use the by tech view, it's a great way to manage start times. And also lunches are very hard to manage. Everybody takes a scheduled lunch. They start, you start waving the techs out between 11 and 1, whether you're staggering shifts or shutting down the shop. How do I know everybody came back and gets right back to work? That's where a lot of lag is. People go to lunch and then there's this huge lag before productivity starts to happen again. So back to by tech home. Did everybody come back? I expect, if we're shutting down from 11 to 12 or 12 to 1, I expect everybody on that page to be green post lunch. Did they come back? Are they clocked in? And are they clocked in green?
And this is where, having a calendar that shows the workday as a whole can help you coordinate that. You want to use a calendar. Obviously, there's a scheduler in Fullbay that you can use, and this is going to show the text, who's scheduled today. It's shaded. If they're scheduled to work today, what availability windows do they have? So if a customer calls up, visually quickly, can we get that fit in for the customer, or do we need to set the expectation that it's not going to get to? We're not going to get to it today. And also this. Assigning work to the technicians, keep in mind that sometimes it can make sense to assign work to a technician before parts arrive, right? If you need to do a tear down first. And sometimes it can be a delicate dance trying to time that, but you don't necessarily have to wait till the parts are there to get going. And you may want to consider that when you're making the assignments.
Absolutely.
All right, next one. Number 4, as a service manager, you're also going to convert what we call repair requests into service orders. And obviously in Fullbay, and you're going to be getting repair requests from the customer or people creating the repair request, and they're going to sit on as a service manager on your service home. So a customer submits the repair request in their customer portal, it pops in immediately, you see it, you can deal with it and so forth. But you're also getting repair requests in other ways. You're getting phone calls and walk-ins. And it can be really tempting to procrastinate writing this stuff down, like just trying to keep it in your head, or maybe jotting it on a piece of paper, thinking, oh, I'm going to put it into the system later. It's really important to not procrastinate this. Put the call-ins and the walk-in requests in your system as soon as possible so they don't fall through the cracks, and you end up in a situation where you're doing unpaid repair work, which I'm sure in the shops listening to us, that's never happened to you, but some shops out there, this happens where you actually have a technician do a repair and there's no documentation to it, so you never bill the customer. You want to avoid that, avoid the unpaid repair work, and also avoid upset customers, because if it falls through the cracks even before a technician gets on it, you may forget about it and it's not written anywhere. So try to avoid keeping it just in your head or just keeping it on a scrap of paper. Get it in. Especially in Fullbay, as soon as you enter it in there, someone has to deal with it. It's not falling through the cracks. And obviously, some of these requests are pretty straightforward to get in there and get right to the technician, so don't delay.
Yeah, a lot of service managers are prior technicians in a past life. So sometimes these repairs are coming in, or a customer comes in, maybe you walk out to the equipment. Help the tech move it forward, because you're just going to lose production, right? So if you've got the time and you got the capacity, get the mileage, get all the details for the vehicle, diagnose it that it's the mud flap missing and the bracket's fine. This is just really tee it up. You can take it right past diagnosis phase. You can put your notes right into the service order, emulating the tech, and now the tech's down to a quarter hour maybe invested, and you're going to bill a half hour because they just got to hang a mud flap with some hardware, or the hardware is there and they just need to hang the mud flap. Yep. So you could really tee them up when you have the time. You can quickly do that in Fullbay, get your assignments done, and get them past diagnosis. Or even if you haven't been on prior webinars, we have things called global services. Some people call them canned jobs. Use a canned job called a mud flap replacement that goes straight to repair. So you don't have to go through the steps of diagnosing. Where it's reasonable, diagnose, and where it's unnecessary, then use the global services to quickly get those to repair and skip the diagnosis process.
And that's a great segue into the fifth one. So halfway through here, writing up work. And you mentioned, Chris, the benefit of going in and doing some of the legwork for the technician before they go in, so the technician isn't having to do, entering the mileage, so on and so forth, if it makes sense. And kind of to the quarterback analogy, I mean, you may be the quarterback, but you still need to pitch in, do some blocking. You might have to do some blocking and tackling, right, to help score the touchdown or whatever. So writing up work gives you a really good opportunity to set up the technician for success and for an efficient job. So some of these more straightforward requests, they may not need any kind of diagnosis. They may not need a complaint diagnosed. So like you said, Chris, that's what global services and PMs are there for. And we just did a webinar on this. If you do a job a lot, throw it onto the list of global services so you can grab it next time. And one of the benefits is it's going to pre-populate the parts you need, the labor, and you can even set up a checklist in there for the technicians to follow to ensure quality. Like, remember to put the nut on once you put the bolt through on the mud flap.
Like a clutch job. If you've looked it up and you know that the clutch job is going to be 10, or you're going to bill 10.5, or the fair numbers to bill a certain value for this clutch job, then build the CAN job, build the global service. You never have to think about it again. I love always the procedures that you mentioned, Jacob. There's always a master technician or a senior technician who's done it 1,000 times, who's just great at it. And there's nothing more effective and more efficient at a shop than having a senior tech list out all the steps to quickly do something very efficiently and reduce comebacks. Like, there's always a knack or a special tool to use or something.
The guy that's really good at wheel seals, and they're always done well.
Exactly.
And he does it fast.
Yep, there's always a trick. And or there's, so a lot of service managers have some pet peeves that you do all these things and I want this done at the end. Well, we have tools in there to just bake those in as procedures. You don't have to over-engineer it, but there's probably 5 key steps that need delivered on this to ensure quality.
Yeah.
Get those inked in, and you'll start to see better standards, and younger techs start to follow instruction, right? Follow a very specific, repeatable path for scalability.
There's also cases where maybe the complaint doesn't need to be diagnosed, but it's not something we do commonly. And something that we recently added is the ability to skip the diagnosis. When you're creating this repair order, service order, you can check skip diagnosis and then just freeform what the repair is going to be. If it's a crazy one-off that clearly doesn't need diag, just freeform it in. And once again, you save the technician all that time.
A bent ICC bumper. We'd have drivers backing into docks. You'd almost think that they were in neutral or something, rolling downhill, and they would crack an ICC bumper or they would bend something. Now, granted, there was always follow-up on the driver's side, but we're sending it over to the shop and we're going to get a weld job, right? And obviously there could be some diagnosis, but usually you go out there and you can quickly diagnose it and say, all right, this is what this is. Skip diag. It's a great opportunity to use that tool.
Yeah, so as a service manager, you're really, once again, teeing up the technician for a good, successful, efficient job. Also, use the labor guide to determine hours to invoice. In terms setting the expectation for what the technician ought to be putting in for the invoiced hours, if you're allowing the technicians to do that. And there's also, a lot of times you may get a phone call, somebody just wanting an estimate. Maybe you don't want to open a full-blown service order, so you spin up a quick estimate, right? In full day, you go up to the plus sign, new estimate, and super easy to do. It leverages all your past work that you've done in the shop, all the parts you purchased, and that may or may not turn into a service order, but if you do this, then it's so easy to convert it if the customer does say yes to the job.
If you're not using the quick estimate off of the plus sign, that because a lot of people will say, well, I use the estimate because it's all in the service order. There's an actual quick estimate that has nothing to do with the service order. And it's a great point you made. It's like almost like an Excel spreadsheet that you can just quickly key in and freeform text labor items, add parts in at will, price them what you want, pull from inventory. Very, very quick, efficient way just to whip up a quote for a customer, or AKA an estimate for a customer.
Yeah.
Yep,
exactly. All right. Now, we already asked this one, so a majority of you do have your service manager handling parts ordering and receiving. and we'll more likely than not, we're going to be doing a webinar specifically on the parts manager, day in the life of a parts manager.
We love the parts managers.
So you may be in a situation where your service manager is doing ordering and receiving parts, and our playbook, our list of best practices, we've got some pretty solid best practices that we've learned over the years for that. So we'll share that later in that webinar. Number 6 is auditing the tickets. Now, this is happening in 2 places. You're going to audit the technicians after the tech is done diagnosing to make sure it's clean before we send an estimate. Whether it's cleaning up the language or, maybe removing some profanities, whatever. But also
the hours.
The hours, exactly. I mean, is everything here appropriate? The parts we're going to use, the description of the service, and the hours that we're proposing to charge here. You need to take a beat to review this before this is exposed to the customer. So that step of auditing needs to happen there, and then it also needs to happen when the tech is done doing the actual repair. You want to make sure, once again, that the description of the service, the hours that we're charging, the description of the parts, all of that is clean before we send an invoice. And if you are, we're not going to ask this in the polling question today, but a lot of times the service manager is the one creating the invoices for the customer.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, part of the process of creating the invoice, they're going to go in and review that anyway. But a lot of shops have it where the invoices are actually created by somebody in the office. Yeah. And if that's the case, you need to have an opportunity to review these and audit the service orders before the person in the office pulls the trigger on the invoice, because they may not know that something the tech wrote isn't accurate or appropriate or may upset the customer and so forth. So you need to have the ability to review this. And this is actually something that just went live in full day last week.
Yeah.
In this past release, you now have the ability, if you choose, you have to turn this on, but you go into your company configuration page, not the shop configuration, but the company level configuration, and you can turn on the review step there. And it's also a permission that you allow someone to review this. We'll show this later. It's also in the help and training. When you log into the app, you click the little question mark in the bottom right, and we've got a video that shows you how to do this. With this review step, solves that problem, right?
Yeah, it's great. And I think that, there's a few people that have asked us, well, what would you use it for? Or, hey, I could really use this, to your point. And literally at the bottom of the service page, there's a new section when these features are enabled that gives you a navigation badge on the service home. So you get a red badge that's counting every single service order that needs reviewed. So you might go to the service page, see 4 of them, go to the bottom of the page after the completed orders, and there's a review step sitting there. And it says, okay, all you have to do is look at it, do your preview, click a button, and it's reviewed. Sends over to the office and done.
It's new.
Yeah.
That's great too.
It's an awesome, because you might have a deal you cut, you might have, I've seen where, the wheel seal gets installed, there's no fluid. Every wheel seal is going to have fluid, so we don't give away fluid. If you're giving away fluid, you could be, but that's just money on the table, right? So we're going to get them for a portion of fluid, but you're just doing the once over and
trying to protect the interests of the shop, and the owner.
You might even use it as a quality check. So you might have, some of you might, because before we had this, you might be putting in a QC check action item on every service order, having everything inspected because we didn't have a review step. You can eliminate that with this if this serves that purpose.
So if you're not auditing tickets as a service manager, if your service manager isn't doing this methodically as part of the workflow and you want to start doing it, because there are a lot of benefits to this, if they're not involved in the invoicing and the person invoicing is not qualified or not necessarily the person to do that kind of a review, consider turning that review step on in your shop and using that step. Like you mentioned, Chris, kind of the red numbers, the red alerts over on the left side do get populated by these service orders that get caught up in review, and it can help you run a cleaner operation.
Yeah, so. Absolutely.
All right, next one, authorized work. All right, so we've audited what the technician diagnosed. Now, a lot of customers require us to prepare estimates, especially in the B2B commercial repair space. We don't necessarily have a high trust relationship with every single customer. And we have to send an estimate out either to a third party or to the customer themselves. And so if the customer does need to authorize the job, you want to prepare a clean estimate that has a solid parts markup and has labor times that are reasonable for both parties. There's a fair exchange of value going on. and has the right labor rate, all this. And having worked in the shop where we were running on pen and paper, we had to do a lot of these estimates, especially for like the ARIs of the world and so forth. And it was so time consuming to do. And that sometimes you kind of, out of necessity, took shortcuts because you needed to get the truck is sitting there and the local dispatcher needs to use it. And yet the corporate or the third-party fleet manager is saying, no, you can't touch it until we give you a pre-authorization number of up to 500 or whatever the situation is. So it was really satisfying to build this part of Full Bay where these things just practically build themselves. So it's the service manager's responsibility to go in, make sure this stuff looks solid, reasonable, and even if the customer pre-authorized work, you need to double check that we haven't exceeded what they pre-authorized, right? And talk about that. We just added something.
There's like 2 new features in this, and that's why we wanted to cover this section. Is in the past, you would send the entire service order to the customer, and they would pre-authorize or authorize jobs. They'd say no or yes to certain action items. Now you can pick and choose. About a month or so ago, we delivered a feature that says service manager can pick and choose what they want to send to the customer to get authorized or not authorized. But over and above that, we just released another feature that allows you to lock in that authorized value or that threshold. So let's say that we quoted out Jacob to do his radiator, and he agreed to $300, and the bill comes in at $350, or the technician goes to add another part and it jumps it up to $350 post authorization. We added a new feature that also is you can turn it on or off, but it basically locks in the service order and says that any parts added after this thing's been authorized that exceed the threshold immediately kick it into needs authorization. Bumps the tech out, puts everything into needs authorization, and you have to reauthorize with Jacob, the customer, to say, hey, that agreement we had at 300, it's now 350. So if you have this need, this is a shop setting. So instead of it being an entity setting and forced through all your locations, you can decide which location needs it. You just go to the shop settings, and it's a little switch you can turn on.
And your mileage will vary on this, right?
Right.
I mean, the level of authorization and how careful you need to be with this is going to depend. Some states, will allow you to bill 10% over what was authorized, and it'll still hold up in court. It depends on your state, depends on the relationship with the customer, the trust level, and what you're willing to, risk not being paid for. But regardless, authorization is such an important step, because if they didn't authorize the job or didn't authorize enough, you want to make sure they're going to pay for this thing at the end before you go buy the parts and pay the technician and spend those scarce resources that you have to do the repair. So, obviously if you're using Full Bay, you can email it to them, have them do this authorization in the customer portal, or you can get them on the phone and talk them through it. But no matter how you do it, as the service manager, you're responsible typically for getting these jobs authorized and making sure that no work is being done in the shop that's not going to get paid for by the customer.
Yep. And also just a quick tip, if you have trouble with collections, Jacob just referenced it a minute ago, if you're getting things authorized and you're having difficulty with collections, or things are being authorized without a signature, you can enable at the shop setting to require a signature on authorization. So if you've ran into that before, you didn't collect a signature, you can require all estimates and invoices to get signature authorization. So if that's something that you didn't know about, there is a setting in the shop. It's been there for a long time. Just kind of a quick reminder, if authorization is an issue, and like the state of Florida, you have to sign off in the state of Florida, as an example.
We also have some cool signature stuff about the drop.
Yes.
All right, number 8, putting jobs in the pickup or delivery queue. So once the job is done, I don't know if you know this, but the truck is now going the other direction on this slide. Once the job is done, you need a list that tells you which of these trucks need to be delivered to the customer, which ones are going to get picked up by the customer. And I can't emphasize this enough, the importance of seeing the customer's credit status. If you have a COD customer, it is an I'm preaching to the choir here. I'm sure everybody on
This
here
is a
gets
finance
this,
guy. This is a finance guy talking about money.
the
So here we
last thing
go.
you want to do is allow a truck to leave that customer's COD, because you might as well kiss that money goodbye.
Yeah.
Not only did you lose the money, you may have lost a customer because they know they owe you money and they're going to go to another shop that they don't owe money to, right? So the importance of collections is not only do you make sure you get your money, you actually can preserve customer relationships and keep people from fleeing you when they owe you a bunch of money. Keep them honest, hold the truck for payment if it's COD. And it's so important for the service manager or whoever is controlling these trucks leaving the yard or leaving the shop, clearly sees what the customer's current payment status. Maybe they do have terms and they're over their credit limit, so we want to hold the truck. Or maybe they're past due on their credit, so we hold the truck. Or maybe in general, they don't have credit, they're COD regardless, we want to hold the truck. You need to know whether to release that truck or not before getting payment first. So, having this list of logistically, what do we need to deliver, who's going to pick stuff up, and what the credit status is on these deliveries or pickups is just so important.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, a couple more here. So helping technicians. So this is more tactical. If you have the skill set as a service manager, a lot of times the service manager is a former technician, right? Or they know enough to be dangerous. If you have the skill set as a service manager, you're going to be helping the technicians diagnose problems, troubleshooting the Diag laptop, right? Maybe the technician isn't trained up on it, on how to use, Cummins Insight or the Detroit software or whatever. Or maybe the laptop itself is having issues. So you ought to be prepared to swoop in and help the technician not spin their wheels, so to speak, on a laptop that's having issues. Jump in and help them with that. And you may be there to hash out how to do a repair, especially if you're a former technician. And that's important. I mean, at the end of the day, as a service manager, you're there to help make the technician more efficient. So any way you can pitch in and help, you want to do it.
Yeah, like a lot of times you use the term player coach. I like that. Service manager think of themselves as a player coach, and in some shops it's not realistic to always be able to do that. But I do think that's being able to get your hands dirty or get into the flow, and it's not an us against them. I always found people had higher respect for leadership when they were willing to go out and kind of roll up their sleeves and get in the middle of the problem to be helpful. Not to create work or create chaos, but to genuinely be helpful, and tips and tricks, right? No one wants somebody over your shoulder telling you what to do all the time, but a tip or a trick on, hey, we just had one of those in here, we found out this. It's just that camaraderie. Or maybe you're signing off, you're the only certified DOT person in there, so you're signing off and you're complimenting somebody as you're helping motivate. Positive reinforcement is always a great attribute for your service manager. Working with techs, it doesn't have to be just saying, here's how to do it. It's just, great job on that last one.
Yeah, for sure. And depending on your state, you may have a safety inspection station there. Maybe you as a service manager get certified on that, so you can pitch in. Maybe do some DOT inspections or even repair work yourself if you're a player coach. And those are all things that you may be doing to help keep things moving in the shop.
If I had a polling question, when was the last time, I mean, we don't have it, but when was the last time you thanked one of the mechanics for doing a great job on something trivial? Because it could get very transactional. 100 repairs a day, 20 repairs a day, weeks go by, months go by, years go by, and it ain't gonna count when it's Christmas.
The basic human.
Right.
Thank you. And that's a great segue into our last one. We kind of jokingly put this guy with the carrot on the stick, but it's a human business, right? Repair. Only humans can do these repairs, and people are, human. You need to treat them like people, not as these objects that are out there cranking wrenches for you. So you need to understand and be skilled and effective at motivating the technicians. And it doesn't necessarily mean constantly cracking the whip or playing Big Brother. Understand psychologically, and if you need to read a few books or listen to some good podcasts on this, on what actually motivates people, do it. But one of the things that we've discovered and is evidenced in the body of work in psychology and motivation is that there's a relationship between accountability and morale.
Yeah.
Like the more accountability there is, morale doesn't go down. Morale actually goes up. People want to be held accountable. And in that vein, on your service dashboard, once again, you want to be monitoring who's clocked into work, who's on the job, who might be struggling. You need to be able to clearly see, and this is actually going live this week inside Fullbay, where you will have on the service page a technician panel that shows you this information, including all the technicians who are scheduled today, whether they're clocked in or not, clocked onto a job or not, and if they're on a job, are they over the invoiced hours? Have they spent more time than we're going to bill, or where are they so far? Are they struggling to get the job done in time? Can you step in and help? Knowing that that kind of visibility is there is a form of accountability that I think a lot of people would appreciate, because it shows where, I might be struggling and you can step in and help me. And it also shows when I'm doing a job well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
We often get a lot of feedback. A shout out to a group, Mike out in Minnesota. His crew, consistently, the technicians will compliment and say, we love Fullbay. We've worked with a lot of software. Maybe they worked at a dealership. Maybe they've worked in other smaller shops. They love the ability to see their metrics real time. One of the comments that we often hear is that it's not like they have to be, big brothers over that. They know what needs to be done. It's right on their tech home. And if you guys aren't using it, there's a $sign on every service order. It's permission based. So depending on what's in that dollar, what kind of permission you have, you can see various things. So if a technician wants to know how they're performing on that job and if they're doing good or bad, they just click the $sign and it tells them, this is your efficiency. This is your current efficiency on this job. Same thing with the service manager or other management, but that level of accountability, if you've set the metrics and set the standard for the shop, and then you give them all the metrics in front of them and they can measure themselves real time, it's way better than a month later trying to produce a report and hold people accountable for something they did 4 weeks ago.
Right.
The corrective action can happen through the cycle of the month instead of at the end when it could be too late and people wish they had real-time feedback.
Yeah, and it's the real-time feedback that makes a difference. Timely, and you get to the point, you get it done and get everybody back to work. As humans, we appreciate that. We want, if there's constructive criticism, we want to have it as soon as possible, and so we have a chance to recover, get back on the horse, and show what we're capable of. So motivating technicians is a huge part of the service manager's job, and as difficult as technicians are to find, you need to treat them professionally. Obviously, you don't coddle them, so on and so forth. But at the same time, you shouldn't be unnecessarily driving technicians away because your service manager doesn't have the basic soft skills to interact with and motivate other human beings.
I'd almost be remiss if we didn't talk about the money side. I know if you've been on some other webinars, we do promote and suggest efficiency bonuses. So if you do have a shop, there is financial benefits that the tech should get as well. And so if I know, Jacob, there's a spreadsheet that from a prior webinar that we've shared with a lot of you, or if you want to go back through our webinars off our website, there's some information on an efficiency bonus.
So hit us up, we can share it with you too.
Yeah, we can share it with you. But ideally, the technicians from an efficiency, if you're going to consider a bonus, they should, if you pay a technician 40 hours and you're going to bonus them, they should at least produce 40 hours of invoiced work. That's 100%, or that's otherwise known as 100% of standard.
It's achievable.
Yeah,
it is achievable.
So that's where you start to bonus. Maybe your shop's not quite at 100%, so you do something in the 90s. But you've got to incent it to where if I pay you for 40, we've got to at least invoice 40. And then when we start crossing that chasm where I pay you for 40, but now we're invoicing 50 on your sole work, well, there's a little bit more. Maybe the bonus is 110% versus 100%.
Yeah, so, yeah, exactly.
There is some monetary value here that we covered in a different webinar. So,
there's a way for it to be a win-win for the technicians and the ownership of the shop to align themselves in a way that everyone wins when things are more efficient. So
yeah, and just not to belabor this one, that we didn't lead in with all the money stuff. I just wanted to, for those of you who are new to this webinar, we just didn't want it to be about money because we don't believe that motivating people always has to be about the money. And that's why we covered some of these things that they're right there underneath your fingertips, just sharing these accountability metrics, complimenting And there's other ways to motivate than just pure financial monetary incentives.
And fear is not the only way to motivate.
Yeah, fear.
Less effective.
People will work very hard for you when they're fearful, and they will also, in fear, go find another job.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, that's what we had. That's all we had for you today. We've got some time for some questions, and let's see here. We've had customers come pick up vehicles and they're over their credit limit once we finalize an invoice. It would be nice to see a total of open AR and open SO so we can give the customer the heads up that they are about to go over, essentially. Yeah, absolutely. We are actually looking at that. So yep. That's coming. All right. Yes, we got a release feature here coming. So we've got some releases that didn't quite make it last week. We're going to do some hot patches this week.
What's the question?
Going live.
Yeah.
Just about the timing of the releases.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
Can you add? Here's a question. Can you add multiple repair items to a quick estimate, and can they be approved individually? Yes and yes. So you can have multiple service items on the estimate, and then you can say yes or no individually to those. You can actually send it to the customer in their portal to say yes or no individually as well.
Absolutely. Great question.
Is there or will there be a labor guide put into full bay? Yes. Next one. You will be blown away by what we do. Just it's coming, guys. Is there a website that has a list of labor rates for different jobs, a set labor guide to quick check? Yeah, I mean, Motors out there, Mitchell's out there. Like I mentioned, we are working feverishly on one ourselves, and yeah, that's coming.
Yeah.
Do you guys plan on adding a labor guide to full bay? Yes. Let me skip through all of the labor guide questions here.
Well, we gotta, for our next one, and it's not in the question, but we do have a parts markup calculator that
yeah, about to go live. Nice tool. Now, obviously, if you're already using full bay, this happens automatically in the app, but if you need to make a parts markup on the fly or you're not using full bay yet, it should be going live in the next couple of days on our website. Just a free tool you can use to do a markup on a part, and you'll love it.
So yeah, look at our ROI calculator, the shop profitability calculator that's on the website. You'll see this new parts calculator, and if you like what you see there, then think about the way that those look and labor guide.
Just to give you a little taste of what life would be like using full bay. So that's a free tool going on the website in the next couple of days. Where do you find the by technician screen? So this is on, and I apologize, we're not showing anything in the app today. If you're not a customer, hit us up for a demo. We're not annoying. We'll walk you through and show you everything you want to see. Just go to fullbay.com and request a demo. But where do you find the by tech screen? This is on the service page. There's a drop down in the top left where you can switch the view from in process to by technician. But there is a new piece right on the in-process screen that's going live this week that's going to show you, we call it the technician overview, and that's where you'll see, just as a high-level recap, each of the technicians in the shop by department. You can filter this by department. If you've got a massive shop, no problem. And then it also shows you who's scheduled today, who's clocked in to work but not on the job, and then who's clocked onto a job, all that stuff. So that's not live yet. Give us a day or two, and that's going into one of the hot patches.
So current state, there is a view there for by tech that a lot of people use. Just make sure, very easy to miss what Jacob's saying. There's a little tiny pick list right there by the button called schedule.
Yeah.
Just click that pick list by tech. You'll get what you need now, but it'll just be a taste for what Jacob's saying is going to be released later this week.
So lots of questions. We even tow back as well. Nice. How does full bay allow you to verify the trucks in the yard? The answer to that is there is a way to do it in a roundabout way, but it's not a workflow that we necessarily recommend. It'd be easier just to use either a notepad or a notepad on your tablet. But within the next few weeks, we are pushing functionality live for the yard check. So you will be able to do it directly in full bay and get it into the flow, onto the rails of the service order.
Yeah.
We think you'll like it. And yeah, I think that covers the gist of all the questions that we had. Can you make the pick list bigger? Yes, Chris asks me that all the time. Yes.
Jacob likes to hide things, just so you know. We're gonna air some dirty laundry. If you can't find it, Jacob designed it. that is our motto. And I don't mean that to be insulting. He just likes it very simple. So sometimes It's so simple. It's right there and it's right in front of you, but it's kind of just blends right in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a minimalist. I try to be
Yeah.
minimalist, try to do that whole thing. But luckily, we're getting much better designers than me
No, you
designing
do a
the
great
future
job.
stuff. So that's the good news.
He does
Well,
great.
thanks everybody for joining and participating. If you have any other questions, feel free to hit us up on our support channel
Yeah.
or info@fullbay.com, and we'll get back to you on those questions. Appreciate you joining, and we will talk to you guys later.
Bye, everyone.